Yeah, see that. We're trying to go. She's still here. Good. Go back. There she is. We're just making sure that it's going. And it usually pops open. And here we are. Slight delay. We're frozen, but that's okay. I can see the front of the thing comfortably. Oh, there we go. Yep. So we're on about a 10-second delay. Perfect. Okay, so I'm just gonna press pause there so we don't have to listen to ourselves talk. Great, and so we're live, ready to go. I guess this is me. So I guess we'll start today with the land acknowledgement. So I acknowledge with respect that we're in Robinson Huron Treaty Territory. The land that which we're gathered is traditional territory of Anishinaabe and known as Wawaning. Wawaning is the home of Gardner River First Nation, Pachawana First Nation, and the Historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest today? Well, none. Good. For the adoption of the agenda, I'm gonna ask for a mover. It's not many of us here today. So resolved that the agenda for the Cultural Vitality Committee Arts and Culture Assistance Program Subcommittee Review Meeting for October 17th, 2024 be presented as presented be approved with a thank you, Miranda, and seconded by Brenna. Thank you for that. I was gonna say business arising. There were yeah, that's it. That's all I'm gonna talk about for now. Business arising. It's fairly broad sweeping the items here. We can pick up where we left off last time where that's relative. As just like as a recap, we went to council. We all know this, but we went to council October 1st, I believe it was. With the report that we would split the funds 50-50, so 52,200 for each intake. That's been approved and is now in place, and so that's what we're looking at as we move forward towards the end of October here in our first intake 2025. What we're doing today probably won't have too much bearing on this next or this current intake. I don't think. I think what we're probably looking at is still guideline review, because process review will get discussed with the larger committee, I think, prior to that. So that's where we're at today, I think, for everybody who's listening. Would anybody like to start? Brenna, do you have anything that you'd like to chat about today or start with in particular?
No, I think it's a positive move that we've got our budget request in. So if that budget gets approved, will we be able to use it for the first intake?
I think that we'll probably be past the point of return for that, potentially, but if it's approved, I think the reasonable thing to say is if it's approved December 8th, I don't have the date in front of me. And we have made recommendations, we could potentially reconvene after that budget has been approved and we're aware of it, and then we can, again, it doesn't get distributed until the end of January anyway. We can reconvene, take a look at what's available and see how that might change things. I don't see why not. I hate to do that when we put in so much work to solidifying answers in that moment, but I also don't want to shortchange anybody either.
So just to confirm, this is a budget increase to the overall budget?
Yes. Yeah, to be perfectly honest, I don't have the facets of where the additional monies will actually go. I know some of it will go into ACAP, but not the whole bulk of what's been requested. Which is great. It's great that it gets distributed across a series of projects and concerns, but I don't know exactly how much that will translate into when we look at ACAP, but I'm hoping that it'll bring it up to. I'm hoping that it'll bring it closer to the mark that was identified in the previous cultural plan. To start with.
So at the very least, for the next intake, we'll have 52,200.
Yeah.
But it could end up being more, and we'll just wait and see.
It could, yeah. And so I would just say we should move forward as we typically do, have a plan, and then if we need to reconvene in early January to rediscuss, that might be an option that we can pursue. We'd have to repeal the motion that we put forward to recommend funding. Ideally, other things that matter, maybe don't matter. I'm just looking for a calendar.
Good to have the procedural details clarified ahead of time, but also we'll just cross that bridge when we come to it. I think it's something that requires additional.
Yeah, more or less. I'm hoping that we can start reviewing the applications at our November 20th meeting that was mentioned last night at the CBC meeting. And then in the first week of November, I'm going to set up a series of meetings, hopefully only 2 or 3, once we determine what the threshold will be. As we move into this prior to the scoring process. So I'm hoping, yeah, so we're meeting again on the 20th. As a plan, I'm thinking the 27th and the 4th, make them evening meetings or lunch meetings, depending on what works better for the group. And then we'd ask potentially everybody have their scoring in by the 20th if possible. Just let me know what we're looking at as well and how many potentially we'll be reviewing. And then we'll have that information available and send it through the next council meeting. I don't have a date in front of me. I have a feeling that it's probably. We're probably gonna get it into the January council meeting, because if we even decide by the 9th, it still has to be in 2 weeks before the package goes to council. So no matter what we do, it's going to be in early January, which is okay. That's fine as long as we have those decisions relatively made. And we can always withdraw that information as well based on budgets. So there.
Well, and in theory, that would be a tighter turnaround than what we've had in past situations also, so yeah, that's positive.
I'm like, I don't know if it is. I'm sorry, just it's always. Yeah, all of it, right? So. Yes.
I wonder, I know this might seem like completely out of left field because it's kind of new suggestion, but are we able to carry over applications potentially rather than have them resubmit, knowing that we might be able to, if our budget doesn't come through right away, we might still be limited to the same amount of things that we fund. But it'd be really nice if we could just like call the applicants and be like, we're just gonna hold your application over for late intake. Or do we completely have to restart every intake with a fresh application? Just knowing that we might not be able to have the opportunity to fund as many that first intake, but if our budget comes through the second intake, we should probably would.
Yeah,
Not-
part of the problem, like one of the problems with this intake process is it really matters what else has been submitted at the same time. Because we're not looking at these applications in a vacuum. They're all great, they all deserve funding, truthfully. It seems to matter, so when it comes down to the providing the money. And providing funding, it seems to matter what else is in the category, what else is part of the conversation at the same time. Is it timely, all the things. I don't know if we would hold it, we could strongly recommend they resubmit, and then I would follow up and remind them to do that and to make sure that they had that resubmitted. But I don't know that we would ask them to do it like that. I would be afraid that they'd be expecting funding and we can't really guarantee that based on what else is coming in.
Yeah, I understand. There'd be no expectation of funding, but it'd be on them to resubmit rather than just us hold it.
But honestly, if they have a high ranking application and we talk to them, like they will resubmit if it's within the, like I said, the activities of their organization. Or even on a personal level, like they will resubmit, like absolutely tell them to.
Right, and they'll know that we'll have more funding coming the next intake, hopefully. Or that the projects we fund will increase as we go to keep applying, right?
Yeah.
I appreciate that suggestion though, and just trying to find ways to make it a little bit easier for the applicants.
Yeah, honestly, what I would do is in that instance, that sounds really maybe silly, but in terms of keeping track of the applications, I would just start a folder sooner. On the drive, but if that were something that they wish to do too, then I would check back in with them prior to the deadline to make sure that the information is still accurate. But I could just start a folder earlier and that would be like no real issue at all. So but yeah, just to keep it in mind, like if it's good, yeah. So as I'm thinking through the literal process, it's just another piece just to keep track of, that's all.
Yeah, and it depends on the project, depending on timelines and things like that, whether it could be held or not, but definitely following up to make sure that we like hold on to someone who maybe didn't get their funding this time.
For sure. I feel really bad. I don't have a lot of materials prepped for this particular meeting. Did we want to take a look at guidelines? I'm gonna pull them up on the screen.
Refresh our memories a little bit.
I've been looking at them a lot.
Honestly, I think we've done pretty well with this, with like getting that to council. the budget increase and the 50-50 is like a really good start. And then every time we look at everything else, it kind of all plays under a little bit of that. Well, how much funding do we have and this and that? I'm not sure, yeah, the guidelines themselves, how much I would suggest to adapt them until,
I know until we see more, I
you know,
share this.
Going through the next intake together too, having the committee refresh their memories with the guidelines before looking at the applications. We could also put a call out to committee members to flag anything to our attention that they see as being an opportunity for change to guidelines, suggestions for improvement.
You know what, actually, here's what I might do, this is really great, thank you for that. What I might do is just put out a call to our committee members and ask if they want to schedule like a one-on-one meeting with me through Zoom, so we can sit through a chat. It's something that I've done with newer committee members in the past, but everybody is always welcome to request my time however they want it, honestly. And so in doing so, we can sit down, talk about the current program, the priorities as they've been set out. And then get some fresh eyes on it. Maybe they can come back with some conversation to share with the greater group at that point. And then, because like Larry said it yesterday, I work with this document all the time. It's got a lot of information with it. But my biggest, I'm just gonna say, like, my biggest beef with this program or with this document is that it's so dense. And it's written with, it was developed like through consultation and all the things, but for a couple different hands as well. So I don't find that there's a through line and clarity in reading it. I don't feel that the language is consistent throughout. It's well written, but it's heavy. It's certainly not easy for people to access. So while we have the guidelines overall, whether or not we change the program and how we address our grant system in the process, or how we address each individual fund, that's fine, but either way, what needs to happen from this is once we decide what that is, it needs to be broken down into digestible pieces, like even individual, like FAQ about each single stream. And yeah, it's tough.
I'm looking at these guidelines. I remember when they were published, and I was one of the readers of the guidelines.
How'd that go for you?
Well, I think that there are lots of places in there where there could be efficiencies, just in terms of summarizing more succinctly what we're asking for, and also summarizing the points. So I'm curious to take a look at it with fresh eyes and just try to work through it and see how efficiently each of these pieces could actually be stated. I think that might help with the density and just make them more straightforward and a little bit more user friendly, and probably also a bit more inviting. I think that there is lots of good stuff in here, but I just think that there is maybe too much stuff.
I had that experience when I reviewed the application form on its own last year, I think it was. It's just there was a lot of extra verbiage where there didn't need to be, where it would just explain things. And again, like I think that comes from a lot of really good intention and a lot of really good research. But not necessarily people who create those types of communication pieces.
Well, and also older documents, trying to bring
Yes.
pre-existing documents into newer times.
Yes.
Yes. And always working quickly. So we have an opportunity now to go back in time a little bit and to be more succinct with what we want to say.
In addition, this is not about I'm gonna share, let's talk about the tourism development funds. I was looking at them again yesterday. Not about the fund and the structure so much as the documents they use to support the fund. Brenda, can you see my screen still?
yeah, I was wondering if so much we need to make it so succinct as if we just need a user guide.
Oh, definitely we need a user guide, like that needs to happen. Looking
Right,
at
'cause some of these are gonna have to be like, well, like the guidelines and stuff, they're gonna be kind of cumbersome, right?
yeah.
Because they're government policy.
I'm just curious to know, looking at them, if we can make them a bit more plain language.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and just more straightforward.
So a couple things, I think they've done a really good job over here with the tourism development fund This is actually more extensive than it used to be when this fund was set up and when it was brought in as part of, under the city's umbrella, we'll say. It was not as, it's not as large as this. This is newer information. I'm not sure exactly when this was developed, but I'm confident that it wasn't there 2 years ago. And so looking at this, I think they've done a really good job. They're talking about priority to applicants, blah, blah, blah. Details and things like that. It's great. I think it's well written. I think it's well done. I like they have eligibility requirements, but they've got 2 different funds essentially, and they've kind of separated those out into 2, and they're not all as part of the same document. As someone who has looked at this document as an applicant when I was a member of committee, but I wasn't part of the process in developing it, I was so overwhelmed, like so ridiculously overwhelmed. And at the time, I hate to say it, this is not about anything in particular, but there was at the time nobody to call. And so it was a lot. And so I'm not surprised that the applications are improving just because there's a point of contact and some consistency in that. But at the same time, sorry, not to like go back, but anyway, the point is looking down at this. All the information is here. I love this format and I don't. The city often puts a lot of information into an application, and when somebody prints it off and they're just trying to get this page, they also have that problem.
But
Their
that,
paragraphs are so much shorter and their
yeah,
Yeah.
headlines are so much easier to find, the
Yeah.
bold title.
and
Yes,
what a nice form. Go back to that form for
It's-
a minute.
it is really nice.
That's a thing of beauty.
Yeah. They have the same problems I do. This is quite in alignment. Sorry.
But you know, if we could start to get the information that we need to articulate in our guidelines, broken down as clearly and as succinctly as what the needs are broken down here, that would be a good starting point. And going through each subsequent application intake and process, because I know that some of the folks on the committee also have connection to organizations that are applying. Recommendations can come up organically over time too, but definitely having a succinct place to begin could be very inspiring and motivating.
Thank you. So what I'm seeing in this, as I'm looking at it, I'm aware of like the streams, festival events, special event stream rather, and then over, they also have attractions and product development, blah, blah, blah. Again, different needs. This is an event as well. I remember before it was really just the application, with this information, again, like talks to the specific fund. Ours is tough. We have many different categories and buckets and different metrics that we're trying to hit. And then we're asking our applicants to look at them directly. I think there have been some improvements in how we've done it. I think the quick version, I gave grab where am I there. I think looking at this, I think the quickest thing that we can do is, I thought we're trying to be quick, but generally, if we're looking at the types of grants and eligibility, I like we've broken it down into project, operational, festival, event, and cultural diversity. I think that makes sense. Like I think it makes sense that they have created 2 different documents for their project streams. I guess the question, or for their project streams and applications. So I guess the question becomes, just trying to figure out how to phrase it, sorry. Do we want to? Is there, if we review the guidelines, is there anything in that we are currently aware of that we want to modify in terms of the program itself? Like, are there any, I need to ask, but are there any easy wins on that right away? Or is there, before we move forward, because I can ask us all to go in and flag things that are not comprehensive, and we can change the plain language and then get down to it and then change it from there. But that, I don't think it makes sense to go, it's almost like working backwards, I think.
Does it, Brenna, I'm gonna refer to you in this, and you can feel free to say, no. But does it make sense for Brenna and I, as members of this subcommittee, to each have a look for ourselves and flag the pieces in the existing guidelines that we feel either need to be reworked and made more efficient, or if there's anything to be taken out completely, and then to come back to you with our recommendations at our next subcommittee meeting, and from there put together a new version that can be taken to the rest of the committee.
Sure.
What do you think, Brennan?
Yeah, I think that would be perfect because as I look through, I think it'd be really great just to read through it. Make sure that we're not doing too much repetition or whatever and catch those, right? So I think that'd be, because I'm not sure if in terms of content, I'm pretty sure like there's nothing too, like I think everything's gonna be fairly accurate in terms of the content. It's just really the structure and making it more succinct, right? So that it becomes a little bit clearer. I don't know if we need 3 sentences to explain project grants because it doesn't seem like the tourism department did, right?
Well,
Yeah.
and also having those tourism guidelines to look at as a North Star will be really helpful to set a precedent for what exists already.
Right.
And
And
then,
how much is necessary to explain because like you said, it can become quite all these notes along the way can become quite overwhelming if you're looking through on what you need to follow. So making sure that these kinds of notes, like under projects, should contribute to the Discord, should be this, should be that, should be that. That's probably good in short form. Right? So we write it out in the paragraph, but there are things that we can put into short form and vice versa so that we don't have so many big sentences or notes that like while you're reading a paragraph, you would have to be like, oh, this is for this. Those should all be in our eligibility, right? Should contribute to the Discord. Arts Forum should engage community. It must be a one-time single creative project or a time-limited series and completed within the first. That could be a point form, right?
Yeah, sure.
So just going through things like that, I think that'd be good. I think I could take this home and kind of look at that, make sure that there's nothing repeated and try and streamline the document.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
well, if there's any infographics or anything that I can support the creation of a user guide with or additional things. So if there are things that are fairly difficult to comprehend through this, maybe some supporting knowledge translation for that user guide. If Miranda, stars something and is like, we really need to see this, or, maybe we can come back those ideas as well. So we'll review and edit, but also consider like what really needs to be in the user guide or taken out and really itemized.
There's one glaring thing that throws me all the time. I'm gonna say, let's find it first. It's a little bit specific. We're talking broader, but this is a little bit more specific. Okay. Yes, so there's, okay. I'm gonna open up, actually, I'm gonna open this up, start here. We're gonna look here at the individual artist application form just for reference sake. So looking down here, one of the things that we ask our applicants to do is to tell us what fund they're applying to. I don't believe, I'm gonna say this really generally because I don't know for sure. I don't believe there's anywhere within the guidelines that indicates that we do allow for stacking. It's something that we've decided to do at the committee level. I don't, and so it's made its way into the form, but I don't think it belongs in the guidelines. Like rather, I don't think it currently is within the guidelines. So if we're going to continue with stacking, I think we need to talk more about that, or remove it entirely from the application forms. I'm not buying one way or another. I have my own feelings about it, but I was gonna say that, here we talk about the Tourism Development Fund, how you can also apply here, and that's kind of what stacking refers to. And there's another spot within the first and TDF. Maybe that's another one perhaps in a second.
I
Yeah,
wonder if we can create some kind of verbiage that gives the flexibility if we find that an application really is in need of it at a given time, but I'm not sure how much we would use that as like a regular process. Oh, there you go, with the
yeah, so stacking of ACAP funding may be allowed with the Sustained Tourism Development Fund. But it doesn't actually talk about doing that against grant streams within the guidelines of other ACAP grants.
Right, so we can't get individual and cultural.
Right. And the thing is like, but technically with the current requirements, like or the way that we've put the application form, it says that we can. Like we've allowed this to happen at the committee level, so I think we don't need to address it in the guidelines here, but I think we need to talk about it with the committee Because it's in any, like neither place really. But so if we want it to continue, we can have that, but I think it should be included here, and if we don't want it, then we need to remove it from the forums for the next round or whatever we move forward. Especially because it does tend to cause a lot of confusion.
Right, I would agree that's something worth discussing, whether we remove it, keep it, or adjust it for special circumstances.
What's great about this document is, again, like it's relatively all encompassing. What could be done in the short term, like we talked about before, if we're not making any real changes. Like this is more about generally about the things, we're not making any real changes to these, to any parts of this document, it can stay relatively as is, and I can create documentation to support it, so that people don't ever have to look at this directly. Ever again, because it's not as helpful as it could be in the actual internal writing. So we have a few different options for that. But yeah, so I think that's a great first step, which you mentioned earlier, was to go back and take a look at the guidelines. And then flag, and then do you think that we can meet again after that? And would you like me to do the same thing at the same time? I've worked on so many committees before, I'm not used to not working and only being staff support, so how would you like me to support this? Just let me
Well,
know.
I mean, would you like to do a review of the guidelines as well, or because you've already practically memorized them?
Actually,
Do you want us to just come to you with a list of ideas, and share them with you at a future meeting? That might be.
I think so, so I know where the inconsistencies are in this document. And I'd like to be part of that, but I certainly don't want it to have the optics of me as a staff member driving this process. But I mean, as a community member, I'm also there as well, right? So. I mean, since whatever you think is most appropriate for me, I'll.
It's not like you're not gonna have an opportunity to provide feedback.
I know.
But if you know, if you want us to tell you what we think, then I feel like we can do that.
Sounds good.
But you have a lot of the experience, so if you're finding, like, what I heard from you is that the TDF sticks out, the stacking sticks out. If there are some other things that I can pay attention to as I go through, that seem unusual to you at least, or have been sticking out to you, because I haven't read this document as much as you have, then I can kind of at least double check those.
Okay, I was gonna say, then I'll tell you.
If it's possible, to send us a copy of this text, this document, whatever, in like a Word format or a format that we can easily mark up with notes and maybe reword some of the pieces. Then before you send that to us, you could flag any areas that you feel particularly concerned about. You can decide how much information to give us about those concerns at the time, unless you want us to just read objectively on and tell you what we think about those passages or questions. So
I don't know why inconsistency that upset me so much.
because you're a marketing person and a communications person.
But thank you. What bothers me a little bit is that we create, well, like this is something I think that we can talk about, and I think that it needs to be flagged. You'll see it anyway, but you know, here we have very specific requests about small project grants, 2,999 up to 100%. Maybe at this time, I mean, without any increased funding, I can't see us making those amounts higher, but at the same time, that's not a lot of money anymore to do a lot of the work, so that's a concern. I'll put these notes in at some point. But you can see here that we have a very specific note here about to a maximum of 100% of the project budget. We do the same thing for large project grants. We indicate who can access those. But we do some of that for operating grants, but we don't actually put a cap on operating grants. We just encourage people to ask for like what they need, which is what I've been doing personally as well, but also it doesn't really give people a viable or a reasonable target to shoot towards, to know that there's only $30,000 in the fund. That's a conversation piece, or $50,000 in that part of the funding for the year. That's conversation that people I make aware of, but it's not here. So there's that. And the same with seed funding, and I don't disagree. I'm sure that anything anyone's asking for is a reasonable amount, but we don't have that information here. And then also for looking at festival events, we have community events grants that are under $5,000. I mean, I would go up to $4,999 to be consistent with other numbers that are involved, but it's fine. But I was going to say beyond that though, we have 5 to 10 here for major cultural operations, okay, no problem. But also then we moved down to the cultural diversity grant, and I'm not sure if this was an oversight or if it was an accident, but we don't have a range here as well. And so again, recognizing that incorporated not-for-profits or unincorporated can, or individuals can apply for this, that's great, but there's no limit on that. So it seems like they're with the smaller projects with individuals, we're limiting them up to $3,000 or $2,999, but then we're looking at these larger groups and we're expected partnerships or nonprofits who come in to apply. But this one doesn't seem to address anything in that upsets me. Because again, it's not fair to applicants, I think.
And I wonder if that didn't have something to do with the fact that at the time, the cultural diversity grants may have been a new stream. And that's a detail that was just missed in the rollout.
Yeah, so I just wonder if maybe we should, if it should be added, or if at this point we should leave it open, because it's not a loophole, there's no exploitation happening here with these funds by any means, but at the same time, it's not giving people an idea of what they can possibly get or apply for, what's expected of them in that way, it's
And
strange.
do you feel
And it
these,
makes it hard on the committee as well, I think.
so if it would clarify expectations, and if you think that it would be helpful to applicants from your experience dealing with them, that is something I think we should consider anyway. What do you think, Brad?
Yeah, I agree. And I don't see us giving out more than 20. So I don't know why, like, not why, but I'm assuming the large project grant outline of 3,000 to 20,000 at that percentage is something that you can use for these seed grants or the operational grants. I'm not sure how much more our fund, until we got a budget increase, would be able to afford more than $20,000 per project. Or I'm not sure if in the history we ever have been able to award more than 20.
I think there was once, I'm thinking once, it was 22 or 23,000, and it might have been fringe.
Oh, okay, but that's a
but
good
with-
guideline for people to
but yeah.
understand.
But everything else has been statistically under $20,000. So there's that. I mean, we have. I don't know. I just don't love the way that this information is organized. I understand also that it was done and it had to go through to council as well, and it has to meet the needs of a corporate document, but I think it's not doing anybody. It's not, certainly the document itself isn't doing anybody any favors when you open it for the first time. Because even as a community member looking at this, I was like, I can't, like, I don't, which stream am I looking at now? Either a small project, whether applying for the cultural diversity grant, whether applying for $10,000, is that allowed? It doesn't say, oh my God. So
Are we allowed to put a table of contents where it's like 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D? That way, I know when I'm looking at one, it's the cultural, that when I'm looking at two, it's the operational.
I totally think that's a great idea. I flooded convention here by adding page numbers and just told I could do nothing else. So, because it was approved by council, so I'm happy to do that, the next version. Yeah, sorry, I'm stressing me out.
If we
Then you need a whole page, title page of like a little bit of a thing that says what the contents are, right? And I'm not sure how.
I feel like our goal with all of this is increasing clarity and increasing that sense of invitation and welcome to people into the program. So, I may be out of my, I feel like anything that we can make a case for including, because it increases clarity of welcome is worth tabling and discussing. Bring the attention of what's going to make those or for us.
Agree with that, and just maybe should go without saying, but we're expecting newcomers and newcomer groups to access this document and apply. We're not giving them an equitable opportunity to do so with the way it currently stands. So
There are lots of grant applications, lots of grant programs that I have been applying to consistently over time. And I've noticed a trend across many different funders at different levels of really simplifying the application process, both in terms of the expectations, but also in terms of the language. And so I feel like what we're embarking on doing here and what we're talking about doing is very very on par with what other funders are doing. And it's an ongoing process. It's one of those things that we're not gonna get to some magical point where we never have to change again. Because the community needs are not static. And accessibility requirements and expectations are not static, so.
That actually makes me feel better as well. I don't mind projects that are evergreen and that require attention. I certainly just, again, like, I just wanna make sure that everybody's aware of that. So moving forward.
These guidelines in the application form are a really important interface between the municipality and the community. And so we need, it warrants our investment in trying to do a really good job of making it inviting.
Excellent. One more piece, I was gonna say that, these guidelines, one of the AODA, requirements that we have, speaking of, relevant terms of accessibility, the city's website is changing. I don't have deadlines and information of that. This information will be housed there permanently. We can have links on our arts and culture site if we wanted to at some point to go back and to meet these documents. But ultimately they will be housed within the city structure or infrastructure online. Moving forward, one of the concerns we've had is PDFs. They need to be accessible and they need to be, I was gonna say that they typically can't require, include like images and I need to say infographics because they're useful, like they're very incredibly useful tools to use. I wonder how we can get around that to make sure that we are meeting the requirements required by AOTA, but we're also, again, serving the public as well, who might be benefit from seeing a visual representation of some of these pieces. I'm not sure what the answer to that is today, but I'm looking forward to it. So this will be something moving forward. I actually had to go back through this document. Not that it's a big deal, but I went back through the document and I removed some of the images that were within. So as I'm having these conversations of ACAP with new groups and committee members and going through, I'm like, these are new, but not new, and I know what I'm talking about, I promise. Like, it's just a different spot than it was 2 months ago, I'm so sorry, and so like as we're chatting more with things. So this information has been put into a table, I'm told it's compliant, or rather in compliance with AOT, but at the same time, I don't think it looks good, like, I think there are things that can be done here that are better. Go ahead, Brenna, sorry.
No, that's, I think, I swear by the cheat sheet. If I go onto a thing, I look at the user guide first, and then I check all these very heavy documents to make sure things are on par, but I need to be able to quickly look through a cheat sheet to see whether I'm eligible
Yes,
and whether it's worthwhile, and then look at the details later. So I do believe you have the option of, like, I think the best case scenario for AODA, because you're not like any non-decorative image, you have to describe everything like that with the captions, is to create 2 documents. And then you have one that's able to be transcribed through any kind of reading machine and can go clearly through a website and things like that. But then you also have a separate document for kind of like a cheat sheet where it's just like the very basics, and that's where I would put those infographics, is for that demographic of people who really need it visually condensed, but then also can't really touch that text document for individuals who need the access to have it read to them, right? So that you have that clear text document, and they're not going to mix, but I really think that having the secondary document is going to be very helpful. And when we go through and edit, not so much to include infographics in this, but let's just say, Miranda, you come across something that you're like, oh, this is pretty complicated. We need some kind of knowledge translation for this, but we might not be able to get away from the verbiage. We might not be able to cut it down or make it as succinct as we would like, because we need the guide, it's a guideline document for the city, right? So I fully think like some kind of user guide cheat sheet is going to be the best way to make this digestible, and having to have both. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do that, like you said, with both documents because of the AODA and the online and the policies and things like that.
I'm actually seeing 3 documents as you're saying this. I'm saying this one is a standalone. And then
Yeah.
again, we have the cheat sheet and then we have the verbiage, and the cheat sheet available for readers in a different format, but again, them being alongside each other.
I think
Yeah,
yeah,
okay,
because as you say, Brenna, we may not be able to make sweeping changes to the enshrined language, but if we were to make a cheat sheet or like a high level takeaway document, a highlights document, then it would be a really easy way of, or easier way of folks going through the language and being able to read through it and decide if it was a good fit for them.
right, we want them to, we want to get that soft yes a little bit earlier.
Yeah,
People actually seem like interested without kind of overwhelmed by the process, so they can see the goal and the outcome and like how much is there.
it will also give you a document to refer people to, so that if there is disconnect between their understanding of the guidelines, they can look at the high level sheet. And then there can be a note at the end of it. And if you're still confused, talk to Ally.
That being said, it's funny because on a personal level, I'll talk to anybody who calls me. But I never want to make a call and make an appointment or talk to a person. I can't imagine if other people feel the same way about that, and they have to call me and talk to me about this. And the call is an hour long, like typically every time we have the conversation, so. With respect to that, it would be really nice to give people the option if they didn't want to talk to me, that I can support them without having to interface with them that way, so.
Right, I have that basic expectation that I should be able to find everything I need without talking to someone,
Yes, exactly.
right? And then if I need to and I need an extra clarification or whatever, then you can call, but everything for someone who lives across the country should be able to sit down, look at this and understand it without talking to anyone, right?
Yeah.
And in
That's
those
right.
instances, totally agree, Brenna. And in those instances, when an idea emerges and you have less time than you would have liked to have before the application submission, if you can't get the information that you need right away, it can be extremely frustrating and can discourage you from actually putting an application in.
I'll be fair in that, maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but I can tell you that it'll also take a little bit of pressure off staff. Throughout this whole month, I try and be as available as possible, but at the same time, recognizing that it's weeks and weeks of time just being available in case somebody needs me. And often they do, and we make it, some people we can schedule the appointments, but other people have shorter timelines to work with, so. Just knowing that's another caveat in the year, rather a couple of months a year, but when the applications are open and timeline, so it helps a bit.
I feel like our ideal goal in this process is making this more user-friendly and approachable for everybody involved, so it's good.
This is a good meeting, thanks so much. Okay, so I think initially the way that we talked about this is that I would review the guidelines with some light notes, nothing too intense. I would send them to you in a Word document as well. And then you'll both take a look at them and come back with some ideas, and we can discuss them at the next meeting before we make any recommendations moving forward. When is a good time to meet next, do you think, about this? Within this timeline, just a couple of quick reminders. Sorry, the call for Indigenous artists closed last week. So I'll be meeting with that group soon to review those applications. Same with the Palm Mall Alley, it closes this Friday, ACAP closes the following week. The week after that, I'll be doing some administration, getting those files ready to submit to committee members. I don't reasonably see myself being able to meet back before the 10th of November. Is that okay?
That's okay with me. There are two big deadlines. The next Ontario Trillium Foundation deadline is November 6th. And so I may not be available to maybe talk.
Do you want to say, I'll put it on the books for around November 14th. And then if that closer to the date, a little closer to that date, that doesn't work out, that's no problem, but that's what we'll be shooting for, so I'll provide those guidelines, and then you can have the time.
I'm
Hopefully,
actually gonna be in town on November 14th.
that's wonderful. Brenna, if you'd like to attend on November 14th in person, I'd love to see you if you're available. If not, it's okay too.
I'll try my best to be down there, and hopefully, like, if there's any edits or if you have something that comes up, like based on the edits that we send back, hopefully you can just be like, oh, can you clarify this, or maybe there's a thing here, so that you don't have to wait till the 14th. So we'll get that back to you, but if you need anything in the meantime, please just email and we'll do the edits and we can have it a little bit more prepared for the 14th, if that's
Yeah. Is there any particular time that works well? I know that with CBC, there's a lot
Afternoon.
afternoon, like daytime, well, like during work hours, or
Yeah, like
Okay.
what? sometime after 1 o'clock or at 1 o'clock. Let's do one to do lunch meetings.
That works for me as well.
Oh, I can do a lunch meeting. And we can get, we can make sure that there's a lunch meeting. I'll just say that. Okay, perfect. All right, I'll send that out so it's in our calendars immediately and I get to work on the back end of this. Is there anything else that we'd like to talk about at this point in time, or? I'm okay.
No, just if anything comes up and we can help, don't feel free to email.
Yeah,
This has been so lovely. Thank you both actually so much. Okay, so
just a reminder too, that this is an incremental process. And this is something that's gonna be, like, these are living documents and living processes, so. We don't have to get all of the right answers right off the hop. We'll make a few good changes that achieve our goals, and we'll just keep moving forward from there.
awesome. All right, that's actually very helpful. Okay. I have somebody move to adjourn, please.
I can move to adjourn.
Okay.
Jump on that quick.
Well, that's good, right here. Great, carried. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing now and I'm going to log off. Thanks so much, Brenna. I really appreciate it. I'll be back in touch really soon then.
Thank you. Yeah, anything you need, just send it my way.
Awesome. Thanks.